This video was made possible by Dashlane. Manage your online security for free at dashlane.com/HAI. So, what's the furthest you could legally travel without a passport? You know, for the next time when some guy under a bridge starts talking you up, lures you in with some free ho-hos, and next thing you know you're doing international drug runs until the Fed sees your passport. Now, of course, there are some situations where you can travel across any international border without a passport. For example, get ready for some pedantry, this is a United Nations laissez-passer, which is not technically a passport. It is a travel document issued by the UN to the staff of itself and other international organizations. This works largely like a normal passport and even has some extra special features like visa-free access to more countries than some other passports and certain levels of diplomatic privileges, with the added disadvantage of that apparently immigration officers often don't know what these are and get confused. Of course, that's because these are rather rare, which is also why, for the purposes of this video, we're not going to close up shop 1 minute in and end by saying that the furthest you could travel without a passport would be Whangarei, New Zealand to Tangier, Morocco on one of these bad boys. So let's say, what's the furthest you could travel without a passport as a normal person, i.e. not sailing a boat from New York nonstop through international waters to the Indian Ocean and calling it a day, which you could legally do without a passport. Returning to any country might be difficult though. Although, the US has a rule for American citizens when taking a cruise that departs and returns to the same place, for example from Miami to the Bahamas to Miami, where you don't need a passport to get back into the US, only proof of citizenship like a birth certificate. This rule is intended for cruises to places like the Bahamas and Bermuda where passports aren't required to enter when on cruises, but the notable detail for this rule is that it's only for cruises that only visit Canada, Mexico, the Caribbean, and Bermuda, so while you can visit other countries without a passport, you can't get all that far away from the US. Cruises are one of the few ways you can cross international borders without a passport though. But a better solution to our big question lies with empires. Of course, last time I made fun of the British, they got a bit salty, so let's just forget about them and talk about the French. The UK will need to get used to people doing that pretty soon anyways. Like the Brits, the French still hold on to a few far-flung pieces of their former empire. In fact, France is the only country to hold territory on 6 of the 7 continents. Thanks to that, you could travel from Urapel, France to the town of Vaal and still be in France, despite them being 10,900 miles or 17,500 kilometers away from each other. Of course, that's because Urapel is in metropolitan France and the other is in New Caledonia, an overseas collectivity of France. Now, this is probably the furthest distance between 2 points in a single country. Feel free to fact check me on that, but wait. I know you're about to clap down a comment saying that it's further from Svalbard, Norway to Norway's Antarctic claim, but Norway's Antarctic claim is very much disputed by literally everyone except for these guys, so it doesn't count. If the Sarari Republic is better recognized than you, you're really not doing too well. Getting back to New Caledonia, there's a problem preventing passport-free travel to this bit of France. It's way too far from metropolitan France for a non-stop flight, so you have to connect via a foreign country, so you need a passport. There are closer bits of France overseas though, such as Réunion. Réunion is an overseas department of France, meaning it is just as much as part of France politically as Île-de-France, the region Paris is in. It's basically the political equivalent of Hawaii to the US. There are plenty of non-stop flights from France to Réunion, and in fact, this 11-hour hop down south is the longest non-stop domestic flight in the world. While there is an immigration check, all you'd need, assuming you're an EU citizen, is your EU identity card. But you could go even further than the 6,000 miles or 10,000 kilometers to Réunion if you experience the joys of domestic flying in the US of A. One could, for example, drive from Point Udall in the US Virgin Islands to St. Croix, fly to San Juan, Puerto Rico, fly to Chicago, fly to Los Angeles, fly to Honolulu, fly to Guam, and drive to Point Udall. Yeah, they were named after brothers. 9,500 miles or 15,300 kilometers lay between these 2 points, which are both, of course, in the US, so you wouldn't need a passport to fly between them, assuming you're American. You would only need a US government-issued ID for the customs formalities when flying to or from Guam or the US Virgin Islands, since they're both US insular possessions. That means that this is probably, maybe, possibly, the furthest distance you could travel as a normal person on normal scheduled transport without a passport. If you think I'm wrong though, leave a comment, and if you're right, you'll win the satisfaction of being right on the internet. Of course, with your newfound being right on the internet fame, you'll want to stay on brand and make sure you never enter the wrong password when you go to log in somewhere. You could memorize all the unique, complicated passwords that you, of course, use for each website you have an account to prevent hacking, or you could use Dashlane. Dashlane securely stores all your passwords and then autofills them on your devices when you go to log in. Dashlane does that for you for free when you sign up at dashlane.com/HAI. They also have a whole suite of online security tools with their premium offering, including dark web monitoring, encrypted file storage, a VPN, and more, which you can get for 10% off by using code HAI when upgrading.